Guess this is not a topic that people want me to share, but I'm going to keep sharing. Ta-Nehisi, as we are reading Between the World and Me, he continues on with his analysis of the shooting death of his friend Prince Jones. So that is where we're going to continue to pick up. The officer who killed Prince Jones was black. The politicians who empowered this officer to kill were black. Many of the black politicians, many of them twice as good, seemed unconcerned. How could this be? It was like I was back at Moreland again, called by great mysteries. But by then I didn't need any call slips. The internet had bloomed into an instrument of research. That must strike you as novel. For all of your life, whenever you've had a question, you've been able to type that question out on a keyboard. Watch it appear in a rectangular space bordered by a corporate logo, and within seconds revel in the flood of potential answers. But I still remember when typewriters were useful, the dawn of the Commodore 64, and days when a song you love would have its moment on the radio and then disappear into nothing. It must have gone 5 years without hearing the Mary Jane Girls sing all night long. For a young man like me, the invention of the internet was the invention of space travel. My curiosity in the case of Prince Jones opened a world of newspaper clippings, histories, and sociologies. I called politicians and questioned them. I was told that the citizens were more likely to ask for police support than to complain about brutality. I was told that the black citizens of PG County were comfortable and had a certain impatience with crime. I had seen these theories before back when I was researching in Moreland, leafing through the various fights within and without the black community. I knew that these were theories, even in the mouths of black people, that justified the jail springing up around me, that argued for ghettos and projects, that viewed the destruction of the black body as incidental to the preservation of order. According to this theory, safety was a higher value than justice, perhaps the highest value. I understood what I would not have given back in Baltimore for a line of officers, agents of my country and my community, patrolling my route to school. There were no such officers, and whenever I saw the police, it meant that something had already gone wrong. All along I knew that there were some, those who lived in the dream, for whom the conversation was different. Their safety was in schools, portfolios, and skyscrapers. Ours was in men and guns who could only view us with the same contempt as the society that sent us. And the lack of safety cannot help but constrain your sense of the galaxy. It never occurred to me, for instance, that I could or should even want to live in New York. I did love Baltimore. I loved Charlie Rudo's on the sidewalk sales at Mondawmin. I loved sitting out on the porch with your uncle, waiting for Frank Ski to play Fresh is the Word. I always thought I was destined to go back home after college, but not simply because I loved home, but because I could not imagine much else for myself. And that, excuse me, and that stunted imagination is something I owe to my chains. And yet some of us really do see more. I met many of them at the Mecca, like your Uncle Ben, who was raised in New York, which forced him to understand himself as an African American navigating among Haitians, Jamaicans, Hasidic Jews, and Italians. And there were others like him, others who, having gotten a boost from a teacher and aunt and older brother, had peered over the wall as children and as adults became set on seeing the full view. These black people felt, as did I, that their bodies could be snatched back at a whim, but this set them in a different kind of fear that propelled them out into the cosmos. They spent semesters abroad. I never knew what they did or why, but perhaps I always sensed I was going down too easy. Perhaps that explains every girl I'd ever loved, because every girl I'd ever loved was a bridge to somewhere else. Excuse me. Your mother, who knew so much more of the world than me, fell in love with New York through culture, through Crossing Delancey, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Working Girl, Nas, and Wu-Tang. Your mother secured a job, and I followed, stowed away almost, because no one in New York at that time was paying for me to write much of anything. What little I did make reviewing an album or a book covered approximately 2 electric bills every year. We arrived 2 months before September 11th, 2001. I suppose everyone who was in New York that day has a story. Here is mine. That evening, I stood on the roof of an apartment building with your mother, your aunt, Chana, and her boyfriend. So we were there on the roof talking and talking. In the sight, great plumes of smoke covered Manhattan Island. Everyone knew someone who was missing. But looking out upon the ruins of America, my heart was cold. I had disasters all my own. The officer who killed Prince Jones, like all officers who regard us so warily, was the sword of the American citizenry. I would never consider any American citizen pure. I was out of sync with the city. I kept thinking about how southern Manhattan had always been ground zero for us. They auctioned our bodies down there in that same devastated and rightly named financial district. And there was once a burial ground for the auction there. They built a department store over part of it, and then tried to erect a government building over another part. Only a community of right-thinking black people stopped them. I had not formed any of this into a coherent theory, but I did know that bin Laden was not the first man to bring terror to that section of the city. I never forgot that, and neither should you. In the days after, I watched the ridiculous pageantry of flags, the machismo of firemen, the overwrought slogans. Prince Jones was dead, and hell upon those who tell us to be twice as good and shoot us no matter. Hell for that ancestral fear that put black parents under terror, and hell upon those who shatter the holy vessel. I could see no difference between the officer who killed Prince Jones and the police who died, or the firefighters who died. They were not human to me, black, white, or whatever. They were the menaces of nature. They were the fire, the comet, the storm, which could, with no justification, shatter my body. I saw Prince Jones one last time, alive and whole. He was standing in front of me. We were in a museum. I felt in that moment that his death had just been an awful dream. No, a premonition, but I had a chance. I would warn him. I walked over, gave him £1, and felt that heat of the spectrum, the warmth of the Mecca. I wanted to tell him something. I wanted to say, beware the plunderer. But when I opened my mouth, he just shook his head and walked away. This concludes our reading today. After several tries concerning Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me. And so one of the things that he covers today is the fact that in our country, it seems that many people are left with this feeling of helplessness when it comes to justice, when it comes to being able to be in control of your body as a person of color, and how that affected him, understanding, as he so eloquently put it, understanding that not just that person's body was taken by the police shooting, but also everything that their parents, that the generations put into that person was taken through that shooting. So very, very powerful expression, something to think about in terms of being a person of color in this country. And in his case, you know, he's an atheist, so he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in, you know, having hope. He doesn't believe in those concepts about the future. So a lot of what I'm reading is really a sense of hopelessness and a sense of lack of control over circumstances, which if you don't have God in your life and if you don't have the hope of Christ in your life, it can actually lead you into a very, very desolate thinking place. And so, you know, just reading his account of how the death of his friend challenged him and changed his life. Because as he said, you know, if Prince Jones could be taken out of here, you know, like that, what chance really did he or his son have in terms of being able to be in control of their body? You know, he said the guy was a good guy. He was a Christian. And so, we have these moments in our life where death can affect us in ways that living cannot. And what I want to take away from this today is I want to encourage you to really think about, especially if you have children, really think about all that you're pouring into them. Think about all that you're pouring into your legacy with them. And think about what would happen, or how would your perspective change if somebody took everything that you had poured and invested in your child and just took it away in a moment. I think that's a good place for us to leave on today and reflect. And we will be back tomorrow with day 5. And I hope that we will not have so many technical difficulties on these devices and through Periscope. So I'm hoping to do one full video on tomorrow. Thank you guys for viewing. We actually will be starting as well our Bible study